of the Senate to our friends from the Virginia Young Democrats. Seeing no additional recognitions, the clerk will call the calendar.
Senate calendar for Monday, January 21st, 2019. Uncontested calendar. Senate bills on third reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I now move that all the Senate bills on the third reading on the uncontested calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 1 through 5, including Senate Bill 999 through Senate Bill 1577, be placed on their final passage in the block. Any senator who may desire to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
I thank the senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested calendar third reading, pages 1 through 5, Senate Bill 999 through Senate Bill 1577, be placed upon their final passage in the block, with the understanding that any senator desiring a bill be removed from the block will do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The bills are before us in the block. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 999, Senate Bill 1040, Senate Bill 1042, Senate Bill 1227, Senate Bill 1248, Senate Bill 1425.
Mr. President.
Senator Donovan.
Thank you. Can Senate Bill 1425 come out of the block and go by for the day, please?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1425 will come out of the block and go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1428, Senate Bill 1480, Senate Bill 1577.
The question is, shall the bills in the block pass? That is all bills except for Senate Bill 1425 on page 4. All in favor of the passage of the bills will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The bills in the block pass.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on third reading. Senate Bill 1168, a bill relating to the Department of Professional and Occupational Regulations, regulatory boards, expungement of disciplinary records.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeStef.
Mr. President, can that go by for the day, please? Thank you.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1168 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1200, a bill relating to the minimum wage, and there is a floor substitute.
Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Mr. President, having voted on the prevailing side, I move to reconsider the vote by which my Senate Bill 1200 was engrossed and advanced to its third reading in order to hear amendment.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall the vote by which the bill was ordered to be engrossed in advance to its third reading be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the floor substitute be agreed to and speak to the motion.
Does the senator want to waive the reading?
Waive the reading.
Thanks, Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor substitute be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor substitute is waived. Senator from Fairfax City, Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, this is a minimum wage bill. Basically, this takes this very fine bill from the senator from Petersburg and does essentially two things. It staggers it in over a period of 5 years through 2024 before it fully takes effect, and you can see the increments that are adjusted on the page 4. And then secondly, it has a carve-out for small businesses, which is defined as businesses with 25 or fewer employees. That would make it similar to other bills that have passed in other states, which are seeking to raise the minimum wage but do so in a more I guess you could say graduated way. And with that, I move the passage of the agreement.
Thank you, Senator. Senator moves adoption of the floor substitute. Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. Floor substitute is adopted. Seeing at least 8 hands, we will have a recorded vote. Question is, shall the floor substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 19, noes 21.
Ayes 19, noes 21. The floor substitute is not adopted. Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Mr. President, I ask that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading. Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Mr. President, I'd ask that we suspend the rules and dispense with the third constitutional reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the third constitutional reading be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. The rules are suspended and the third constitutional reading is dispensed with. Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Mr. President, I ask that the bill pass.
Thank the Senator. You want to speak to the bill?
Speaking to the bill. Sorry, Mr.
Senator
President.
has the floor.
Mr. President, this has been a simple bill that it's been out for quite a while now. It came from one personal story that I would share, but it was from many personal stories that I've heard over the years from those who find themselves in a position that they're hard workers, they want to work, but they unable to make a salary that will allow them to provide a quality living style for their families. One is a constituent that I have from the city of Hopewell, and her name is Vet Hodge, and she says, I have been a home care provider for 20 years. Home care providers like me help people with disabilities and older adults live at home and stay out of institutions. By doing that, we also help save the state money. Over 20 years, I've cared for people with disabilities, people with dementia and Alzheimer's and the elderly. I help them with bathing, cooking, getting prescription medicines, grocery shopping, and many more things I do for them to help them with everything they need. With my help, they have been able to stay in their own homes where they can feel comfortable and secure and where they can see their family more easily. I have loved being a home care provider because I love giving my clients quality one-on-one care. Home care is more than just a job. I became a part of their lives and their families. I learned so much from my clients. I learned how to garden from one client, and I learned about family from another. I love doing home care as much as my clients love being home. However, home care providers like me face serious challenges. The biggest challenge is that the pay is way too little. I wasn't able to take care of even the basic needs of my family. I couldn't pay the rent, pay for my car, put food on the table. I'll stop right there because it's more. But I will tell you, Mr. President, it's been 10 years since Virginia workers received an increase in wages. Meanwhile, the price of everyday goods continues to go up. In 2009, the average price for a gallon of gas in America was $1.78. Today, it's $2.41. In 2009, the average home price in Virginia was $233,000. Today, it is $255,000. This simple bill allows us to start the progression of $10 July 1, 2019, $13 July 1, 2021, at 2020. Sorry, Mr. President, and $15 July 1, 2021. I ask that this bill pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak in opposition to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I salute the gentlelady for her motivation in bringing this bill. We all want higher wages for Virginians, and I believe that that is a laudable goal. It's something that we work for every day in this body, improving the business environment, trying to make sure that businesses have conditions that are conducive to expansion and growth. And in fact, in Commonwealth of Virginia and across America, over the course of the past year or two, we have seen an increase in the wages that are being paid to workers across Virginia and across the country. And this has taken place even without raising the minimum wage. And my concern is rooted in a number of issues. First of all, this bill more than doubles the minimum wage in Virginia. That's a big problem. It's a big step. It's a big jump. Now, in a former life, I was an economist, and I understand that you can't suspend. No matter how many powers we have as members of the legislature, we can't suspend and we can't override the laws of economics. And the laws of economics are pretty simple in terms of supply and demand. When the price goes up, the demand goes down. And that goes for jobs and pay as well. When the salary you have to pay to employees goes up, businesses are going to employ fewer of those people. Now, there are an awful lot of people for whom I really want to make sure that their wages continue to go up. But the problem with this is that a lot of jobs are going to disappear. It's not just that people are not going to see increasing wages. It's going to see their jobs go away. And that has been the experience across the country with this movement to dramatically increase the minimum wage to $15 an hour and wages in that range. It eliminates jobs. In a lot of ways, it hurts the very people that this kind of legislation is intended to benefit. There are a lot of people who are entering the workforce who need the experience and the skills that come with a first-time job. Kids who are in high school, kids who've just finished high school, people who don't have experience getting up and going to work and understanding the demands of the workplace. And these minimum wage jobs serve an important purpose. And if we raise the minimum wage in the manner that's described in this bill, what's going to happen is those jobs and those opportunities and those learning experiences are going to disappear, and we're not going to be able to provide that to the kids who are graduating from high school, people entering the workforce, and we're going to hurt an awful lot of businesses that depend on providing those opportunities to those who are just entering the workforce. So despite the good intentions of my friend from Petersburg, I admire what she is trying to do. I'm all in favor of raising wages in Virginia, and I believe we've gone a long way in that direction. We've got a long way to go, but this, ladies and gentlemen, is not the way to do it. It's going to hurt working Virginians. It's going to hurt people entering the workforce, and it's going to hurt businesses. So I would urge my colleagues to vote no.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
We just heard a rather nice speech from the senator from Shenandoah, Rockingham. But unfortunately, it doesn't square with the facts. What he's described has not happened anywhere. And in fact, there just was a recent study. Arizona raised theirs is up by 2020. Actually, it rises to $12.50, and it's slightly lower than that now. And they've just completed a study, and it had no impact at all as far as costing jobs. And quite frankly, 29 states plus the District of Columbia have a higher minimum wage than Virginia. Even Arkansas and several others, I think southern or southwestern states. You know, it's if we went by the rise in the cost of living since the 1970s, early 70s, it would be over $15 an hour now. At $7.25, quite frankly, if your business plan says that you can't pay more than $7.25 an hour, you're really not long for this world. And I got to be honest with you, I wouldn't hire anybody who would work for $7.25 an hour. So we're not, you're not going to cost people jobs. And, what happens is, and don't think we're not paying for this by keeping it at $7.25 an hour. These people, a lot of them wind up are on public assistance. And guess what? I would guess that when you added up the benefits the states are giving them, it's above $7.25 an hour. So essentially, we're being penny wise and pound foolish by not raising the minimum wage here in Virginia. I haven't had anybody from Northern Virginia tell me, any of the business community, that, hey, we shouldn't be raising the minimum wage. Quite frankly, like I said, it's absurd. And by the way, also, if your business plan shows that you can't pay more than $77.25 an hour, let me tell you one other thing. You're not the next Warren Buffett.
Senator, for what purpose is Junior Senator for Richmond City, Senator McClellan, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to share another story from Laura Lynn Clark in Henrico County. She is also a home care provider who earns less than minimum wage, although she works full time. For 25 years, I worked as a home care provider for a woman with disabilities. This woman was more than a client for me. She truly became part of our family, and I was able to help her live the happiest, healthiest life possible. During those 25 years, however, I never made more than $9 an hour. Despite my hard work, my experience, and my skill, the cost of everything continued to go up and up, but my pay stayed mostly the same. And it's not just home care workers, child care providers, food service workers, truck drivers. We are all struggling to make a living, and it's getting harder and harder for all of Virginia's working families. My husband had to work 2 to 3 jobs to supplement our income. When my client passed away, I was heartbroken, and I was broke. After 25 years as a home care provider, I had no savings. Every dollar I earned was stretched to barely cover rent, bills, and food. I don't know what to do. I don't know that I can ever retire. It may be too late for me, but it's not too late for others. Mr. President, a few years ago, I took the minimum wage or the living wage challenge. In this challenge, you try to live a week on what it would take, what you would bring in if you made $7.25 per hour. The generic calculation estimates that these earners, after their housing bills, have $77 for the week for food, gas, emergencies, and everything else they have to pay for. Mr. President, I ran out of money on the second day. The Pew Research indicated that in 2013, the real purchasing power of $7.25 was about where it was in the early 1980s and below its peak in the 1960s. But the price of everything else has gone up quite a bit. And folks are struggling just to put food on the table, choosing between medication, food, clothing, shelter. Even though they work every day, some doing very difficult work caring for our loved ones who cannot take care of themselves. It's time we look out for them. There were amendments that would have made this bill a little bit easier for some on the other side of the aisle, but they weren't accepted. But $7.25 an hour is just not a living wage. It's time we increase it. It's time we do it now. And that's why I ask you to support the bill. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, the senator from Hampton, Senator Lockrise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to speak in support of Senate Bill 1200.
The senator has the floor.
Mr. President, we all want the opportunity to thrive, no exceptions. But when corporations and special interests conspire to keep wages low, families can't get ahead. We know that every job should be a good job and hard work should pay. It's long past time to raise the wage so that everyone who works hard can live with dignity. Everyone should have the opportunity to succeed and have a stable future with financial security and independence. People who work hard and play by the rules should be able to afford to live with dignity and raise a family. Raising the wage is a shot in the arm for our economy, giving working families more money to spend, which in turn gives our community, businesses more customers. Raising the wage to $15 would help close the wage gap and give a boost to families struggling to help their kids get ahead, lifting them out of poverty. People who work hard and play by the rules should be able to afford to live with dignity and raise a family. This is America, where growth comes from the middle out, not the top down. People want to be working hard and earning a decent wage that can support a family. Too many working Virginians are losing ground and not getting a fair shot at the American dream. We need to create an economy that works for everyone, not just the wealthy few. No one is guaranteed success in America, but everyone deserves a fair shot to succeed and make enough to pay their bills. Our Commonwealth needs new policies that provide everyone an opportunity to get ahead, and a minimum wage ensures every family can make ends meet. I implore those who do not support this legislation to try living on $7.25 an hour themselves. I, too, took the living wage challenge. I ran out the first day. So Senate Bill 1200 is a start in the right direction for giving citizens a chance toward a livable wage. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Eastern Fairfax, Senator Surville, rise?
Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm going to tell a very quick story and make 2 points, and then I'll sit down. Every once in a while I'll take on a case because I'm interested in helping somebody out. I had a client that came to me a few years ago who had a child custody problem. He lived on Route 1 near my house, and he lived in the apartments down the hill, and he was trying to get custody of his child. And I was talking to him about his child support and trying to figure out what his child support obligation would be, and talking about where he worked. And I said, "Where'd you work?" He said, "Well, I work at Chipotle." And he lived about 2 blocks from the Chipotle up the hill, right next door to where I used to work, Bob's Big Boy, when I was in high school, where I made $1.79 an hour plus tips in 1987. And I said, "You work at that Chipotle right there at Beacon Hill?" He said, "No, I don't work there." And I said, "What Chipotle do you work at?" He said, "I work at the Chipotle in Union Station in D.C. I said, "Why do you commute from Route 1 to Washington, D.C.? He said, "Well, they pay me $13 an hour at the D.C. Chipotle. The Chipotle in Beacon Hill only pays $10 an hour." So we have people in Northern Virginia that are commuting, leaving Northern Virginia to work in D.C. because D.C. has minimum wage that's higher in Virginia. And they're riding the metro, they're driving on the, actually he's probably not riding the metro, he's probably driving in his car or riding a bus. But we have people that are commuting out of state to work because of our wage. The second thing I want to dispel the idea that this is somehow bad for business. You know, we talk about our CNBC ratings all the time. And Virginia moved up, I guess, to number 4 this year. We were number 1 for a while. We went down to 7, I think. Now we're back at 4. So number 1 is Texas. Number 2 is Washington. Number 3 is Utah. We're number 4. Colorado and Minnesota are 5 and 6. State of Washington, minimum wage is $12 an hour. And they're 2 spots ahead of us. They're scheduled to rise to $13.50 by 2020. State of Colorado, 1 click below us. They're at $11.10. They go up to $12.20 as of January 1st, 2020. Minnesota is at $9.86 right now. They're $2 an hour higher than we are. They're only 2 clicks below us. Colorado and Minnesota were higher than us, actually, for the last 2 or 3 years. But the idea that minimum wage is going to somehow destroy our business competitiveness ratings, to me, is nonsense. There are states that are $5 an hour higher than us right now that are ranked 2 spots higher than us. And the last thing I just want to say is that anybody, a minimum wage basically equates to $15,080 per year for somebody that's doing 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year. Nobody can live on $15,000 a year. And if somebody's getting paid $15,000 a year, there's a pretty good chance they're getting benefits from the state, whether it's Medicaid, whether it's temporary aid for needy families, whether it's other things. And by keeping our minimum wage down, what we're doing is basically subsidizing large corporations because taxpayers are making up the ability for these folks to be able to live. And by raising minimum wage, I think it'll actually have a positive impact on our state budget, not only in income taxes, but in terms of the services that the taxpayers are required to pay for. And at the end of the day, from my point of view, if we invest in people, they're going to invest back in our communities, and it's going to help everybody because a rising tide lifts all ships. And that's exactly what this does, and that's why we should vote for it.
Thank the senator. For what purpose, the senator from Prince William County, Senator McPike, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak to the measure.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, raising the minimum wage would impact roughly 1.3 Virginians, many of whom are women and minorities who work every day to make ends meet. Now, there's a misconception that the majority of workers who earn less than $15 an hour are teenagers working a part-time job. And in fact, many of these workers are adults working full-time, trying to earn enough to support their family and their futures. And without the opportunity to earn a living wage, these workers have to work 2 and 3 jobs to make ends meet. And that means time away from their kids. That means time away from the opportunity to read to them at night, to teach their kids something new, to spend just a few moments because they are working multiple jobs. This has a huge impact to Virginia's families. By raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, the Commonwealth would have more money to spend and boost our local economies. Furthermore, our state expenditures on assistance program would decrease dramatically. In fact, a study from a few years ago showed that raising the wage to just $10.10 would result in a decrease in SNAP enrollees by over 100,000 and reduce Virginia SNAP expenditures by more than $105 million a year. Here in Virginia, as many of you recall, we had over 3,800 state employees who were paid so little that they were below the federal poverty line. Over 220 of these employees were earning so little that they were receiving federal assistance. That's pretty shameful. These are things we can do better. Virginians look to us for guidance on these things. Americans have been earning a minimum wage that requires them to live below the poverty level for decades. It is time that we end that, and I hope today you'll join me in supporting an increase in the minimum wage to these hardworking Virginians to provide for their families and to decrease the cost of assistance programs to taxpayers and to boost our economy. But more than that, when you work out the math, folks, it's about someone going to work, earning a day's wage for a day's pay, and just earning a little over $100. When you work through the math, not a lot of money. Not a lot of money at all, folks. Just over $31,000 a year for your labor and services throughout the year. And I appreciate your support for the measure. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from James City County, Senator Norman, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in opposition to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I would say that there seems to be a reoccurring inaccurate premise that is coming from some of my colleagues. And I would say that a strict empirical business analysis is not an expression of a lack of empathy or sensitivity to lower income individuals. Many times on this floor, I have heard arguments that have been presented that attempt to capsule egregious situations or some of the most heart-tugging situations to emphasize a point. After this bill came up in committee, I did something that is very uncharacteristic of me. I decided to have some research done exactly on what impact, if any, raising the minimum wage would do. One of the senators spoke about what has taken place in other states. So before we migrate to Virginia's situation, let me remind you that in the San Francisco community, that an analysis was done in late 2017 and found that for each $1 increase in the minimum mandatory raise, that there was a 14% increase in the closing of medium-income restaurants. You mentioned Washington, which has really been the poster child of some of these minimum mandatory wages at $15 an hour. One of the things that they found in Washington, as they increased the minimum mandatory wage, that these lower income workers ended up getting less hours to work so that business individuals could compensate for what the increased cost would be on their customers. But that's all out there on the left coast. Let me try to share a few Virginia factoids with you. One of the things that they found under the Obama Congressional Budget Office was that even at a $9 minimum wage, it would cost about 100,000 jobs, and going to $10 an hour would cost 500,000 jobs under that administration's analysis. As a matter of fact, in an updated analysis using the same methodology that the Congressional Budget Office used under the Obama administration, it found at $12 an hour, Virginia would lose 24,000 jobs. It is also interesting to see this. Nobody is talking about potentially what the impact would be on the seat of government or the Commonwealth of Virginia. The Department of Human Resource Management, which is our agency, has taken a look at it, and they have found that if we ultimately go to $15 an hour on the mandatory minimum wage, that it's going to affect almost 7,000 salaried employees and have almost a $20 million impact every year. So I would suggest to you, Mr. President, that from a business analysis and not being insensitive to lower income people, but looking at the impact to businesses, that there is some empirical, not emotional data that supports why this is a bad idea. And I'm sure that all of you are aware of the number of organizations that have come out in very fervent opposition to this, and I was particularly interested in the comments from the senator from Eastern Fairfax and the senior senator from Fairfax. My favorite group that has come out in opposition to this is the Northern Virginia Chamber of Commerce, my buddies. So don't tell me that you're not hearing anything from Northern Virginia.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards, rise?
Mr. President, rising in favor of this bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, the minimum wage has not gone up since 2009. And since then, one of the biggest, and even before that, biggest problems of our country and our Commonwealth is income divide. Those at the high income level are doing very well. Those at the low income level are doing not so well. In fact, because we've not had a rise in the minimum wage, those at the low income level are worse than they've been in I don't know when, many, many years, probably since the 1960s. Mr. President, in addition to that, contrary to what you've just heard, it's good for business to raise the minimum wage. Why? People who have money at the lower income level, people who have additional $1 per hour or additional $2 per hour, what do they do with their money? They spend it. And when they spend it, it's good for retailers. It's good for the economy as a whole. So overall, Mr. President, the studies show throughout the country, when you raise the minimum wage, you're actually helping the economy because those at the low income level, they spend all their money. They don't save it. They spend it, and that's good for the economy. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Arlington, Senator Favola, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm speaking in favor of the motion to adopt the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just think it's worth noting that Virginia has the 15th highest cost of living. That's adjusted for all the other states. So, in effect, what we're doing by not increasing the minimum wage is we're allowing this incredible disparity to grow among the haves and the have-nots in our state. And I think that's something we need to address. Although it was mentioned earlier that public assistance benefits make up the difference when industry doesn't pay workers a living wage, I bet none of us realize that it's actually 69% of non-elderly who are working at jobs that are minimum wage or slightly above, they're receiving public assistance. And those dollars are either state dollars or local dollars. Dollars to support them to pay for their housing. Many of them are getting food stamps. Their children are eligible for free and reduced lunch. We are providing that safety net when we allow industry to not pay a living wage. And we need to think about it in that context. And lastly, many of the points I was going to make have been made rather eloquently by my colleagues, but I guess there's studies and then there's studies. There's a study done by Wilson and Bellman that they looked at 37 statistical analyses of the impact of the minimum wage on different jurisdictions and found that there was not a negative impact on employment. The fact is the jobs that our lower income workers are doing need to be done. And they are a driving force in the economic engine in our communities. And we need to step up and allow them to make a living wage so we have safer, stronger, and more vibrant communities. And by the way, most of the individuals who are making minimum wage or slightly above are women, and they're heads of households. So for these and many other reasons, I really implore the Senate to pass this measure. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Southern Fairfax, Senator Barker, rise?
Excuse me, Mr. President. Speak to the measure.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I speak in favor of this particular proposal. I would like to address a few issues that have been raised. There's been some concern about how quickly we are moving to increase the minimum wage, but yet we had an opportunity today to spread that increase over 5 years instead of 3 years, and not a single person from the other side of the aisle joined in supporting that motion. We are in a situation where, although we are one of the more affluent states in the nation, we clearly are behind the majority of states in terms of our minimum wage. As was noted by the senior senator from Fairfax, 29 of the states, as well as the District of Columbia, all have higher minimum wages, and many of them have unemployment rates that are lower or comparable to what we have in Virginia. There's no excuse for us not moving forward and providing benefits for all Virginians in terms of the strong economy that we are building here in Virginia. I would also note that in states that have, many of the states that have increased the minimum wage have done so despite the fact that they are heavily Republican in terms of their overall voting patterns. And in many instances, what has happened in those states is it's not necessarily been by the legislature, but it's been by initiative and referendum. We don't have initiative and referendum in Virginia, but those states that have initiative and referendum, a lot of them have used that process to be able to put to the voters a proposal for raising the minimum wage. And what has happened in those states is that almost without exception, and often by overwhelming majorities, the public is in support of raising the minimum wage. Those people in those states who have substantial incomes, middle income, upper middle income, and even the wealthy, have often been supportive of that because they want everyone in their state to benefit from the economy that we have and from the jobs that people have, and for the people that are working hard in those jobs to be able to support themselves and their families adequately. Finally, I would point out that last year we passed a Medicaid expansion here in Virginia. Many of the people who are coming on the rolls for Medicaid expansion, and it will come out on the rolls over the next year, would be in a position where they would not have to rely upon Medicaid. They would have income levels that would push them above the 135% of poverty that's required for the Medicaid expansion. And that would actually in many ways benefit us as a Commonwealth. And we need to take advantage of those types of things in many ways, in any way we can as well. Thank you very much.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. To speak against the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, listen to the eloquence of my colleagues across the aisle, and there were a couple things that I was struck with. One, that we're hearing about Washington State and their propensity for business in our nation. And Mr. President, I noticed on our calendar that we're going to be taking up a bill very shortly about a major employer that's moving its operation from that state that is supposed to be so prosperous to Virginia. Mr. President, so as we have that discussion about Amazon, I want us to keep in mind the business climate, the state from which they were moving. Mr. President, it also caused me to check a publication called the Business Insider, and there was a University of Washington study done. Right after, in 2015, Seattle and Washington raised their minimum wage to $11, and the University of Washington study found that low-wage employment actually went down after that minimum wage increase. So, Mr. President, as we're talking about facts and reality, I would like us to talk about some facts and reality of business climates and impacts that we're going to see and discuss here momentarily on the floor of the Senate, and the fact and reality that raising minimum wage in a recent study did not lead to low-wage earners having more employment. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose does Senator from Portsmouth, Senator Lucas, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I think Amazon starts at $15 an hour, but nevertheless, the National Bureau of Economic Research recently released a new research evaluating the impact of 130 state-level minimum wage increases from 1979 to 2016. They found overall number of low-wage jobs maintained essentially unchanged over 5 years following the increases. At the same time, the direct effect of the minimum wage on average earnings was amplified by modest wage spillovers at the bottom of the wage distribution. Our estimates by detailed demographers groups shows that the lack of job loss is not explained by labor substitutions at the bottom of the wage distribution. It also found no evidence of disemployment when considered higher levels of minimum wages. In other words, minimum wage increases boost incomes, don't lead to job losses for low-wage workers overall of any particular group, such as young workers or low-education workers. A 2018 University of California, Berkeley study of minimum wage increases in 6 large cities found that policies are working as intended. Thus far, they're raising the earning of low-wages workers without causing disruption in the labor market. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1200? Seeing none, Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I have to first say thank you to my colleagues that voted for this bill in committee to allow us to bring it to the floor for a debate so that the people of Virginia could see us hard at work trying to make the decision on their behalf. Mr. President, I've heard information from both sides. I've heard the factual information. I've heard the feelings, the passion of my colleagues on both sides of the aisle. But, Mr. President, I know that if we're serving this body, all of us make more than $7.25 an hour. But, Mr. President, I also know that if we are at the seasoned age that a lot of us are, that either we or members of our families or friends are going to need the services of people that make $7.25 an hour, because they take care of our most precious, valuable folks here on earth, and that's our families, our children, our parents, those who need their help. And they do this at a sacrifice of their own. These are the caregivers from all over this Commonwealth that we expect to help us in our homes and the nursing homes. And we go there and we say, how come these people are not given better care? Because it costs to get people that really care about what they're doing And it's hard for them to care about what they're doing when they're concerned about their families at home that they cannot support on $7.25 an hour. Mr. President, it took a bipartisan decision to get this bill out of committee. It will take the same to move it out of the Senate, down the hall to the House for possible consideration. I hold no disillusions, but I'm always hopeful that there will be enough good people that realize $7.25 is not enough for people to better themselves, to become independent, instead of being dependent on services that others have to provide because they just cannot make it on $7.25. If we want to help people move from dependency to independence, it starts with us. They have sent us here to make a difference for all of them. They trust us to make decisions as best for all and not forget where we came from or what we promised when they gave us our vote. I have no disillusionments about the outcome of this. But again, Mr. President, I ask that this bill pass.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1200 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 19, noes 21.
Ayes 19, noes 21. Senate Bill 1200 fails.
Senate Bill 1153, a bill relating to the Virginia Public Procurement Act job order contracting limitations.
Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the bill,
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a good small business measure. It came at the request of Loudoun County and has been coordinated with many of the localities since. Basically what it does, we have on the books a provision that allows for job order contracting. The current maximum threshold or maximum amount is $5 million a year that can be used for this. And this basically adjusts the amount for inflation from $5 million to $7 million. It also includes a construction cost of index inflation adjuster so that we don't have to keep coming back and redoing this every few years. So that should make this a more permanent provision. The thing that I particularly like about it is that it has a couple of provisions that limit the amount of any particular contract that can be let under the job order contracting system. And on lines 27, 28, it limits the individual job order to not exceed $500,000. Beyond that, we have a provision that allows safety improvements and traffic work. But in that area, we limit it even further to $250,000. And I suspect that those are contracts that will be picked up by small and women, minority-owned businesses in large part. Now, that's just from my understanding of it. But I think it does some real good in terms of opening up small businesses to genuine small business companies, and also fixes this periodic problem of having to adjust the amounts. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that it'll be your pleasure to support the bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does Senator from Prince William, Senator McPike, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak just against the measure. I know the gentleman from Loudoun carrying it on the behest of his locality, which I do appreciate. The my issue with this is the job order contracting is done by actually large contract companies, not small businesses. That's the effect of it. I've worked in this business for over 20 years and utilized job order contracting as a tool. The issue is that the unit prices and alignment and sophistication of the contract type lends itself to bigger contract companies and actually not small companies. There are a lot of smaller value dollar jobs for couple $100,000 that actually makes a big difference to a small construction company. This is shifting those out and taking those small jobs away from a lot of small contractors in your communities. And so I just put a word of caution in voting for this and pump the brakes a little bit on job order contracting. It is a tool. It can be utilized. But as that vehicle grows, you're cutting out some of the little guys in the process. So I appreciate the Senator's effort on his locality's behalf, but I do have some concerns. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1153? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1153 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 22, noes 18.
Ayes 22, noes 18. Senate Bill 1153 passes.
Senate Bill 1087. A bill relating to election districts, requirements for precincts, remedying split precincts.
Senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain.
Mr. President, I move the bill pass. And speaking of the bill,
there's the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, this is the same bill that actually passed this body virtually unanimously last year. Senator Barker and I co-patroned this year and last year. What this does is it addresses the situation of split precincts. That is, precincts where you go in and half of the people in that precinct vote for candidates in one legislative district, and others in that same precinct get a different ballot with candidates from another legislative district. It's highly confusing. It leads to confusion among voters. It leads to confusion among election officials and increases the likelihood that there's going to be a mistake and an error that may affect the outcome of an election in a closely divided district. In the past, we have been able to come back to this body in January and modify the districts so that we can eliminate split districts. Over the course of the past decade, however, because of some of the divisions in the body and beliefs about whether that's a general redistricting or not, we have not, over the past 10 years, eliminated or addressed split precincts. So the challenge is, how do we do it? Do we just let these split precincts continue to exist and let the confusion and prospect of error continue to persist? And we believe not. We believe that we should adopt the we go, you go approach, in which after we redistrict, local governments redistrict so that legislative districts, to the extent possible, are within the same precinct so that we don't have split precincts. There are going to be cases in which it's going to be impossible to do so. However, the bill contains waivers for those situations. The problem is not that we're trying to eliminate all split precincts. It would be wonderful if we could, but the number of split precincts has increased from somewhere in the neighborhood of about 85 10 years ago to nearly 300 today. And we haven't been able to eliminate those. This is the most practical way that we've come up with being able to do so, and it's our hope that it will pass this body again, and maybe it will receive a warmer reception at the other end.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1087? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1087 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Bill 1087 passes.
Senate Bill 1243, a bill relating to elections, date of June primary election.
Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Move the bill passed. And speaking of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a pretty simple bill. It just takes where the June primary is now and takes it to a week after that so that we're not having the primary in June during school hours. Currently, if you talk to a lot of school districts, having the primary during school near the end of the school year causes a lot of conflict with the calendar and impede on the end of the year assessments and preparation as these folks get wrapped up. I know there's a lot of debate about turnout and some of those things with regard to primaries already. This is a request of one of my school districts in Albemarle, and pretty much all the school districts in my district in the 17th are in favor of this. With that, Mr. President, I'd yield to my colleague that's also on the bill, the senator from Fauquier.
Thank the senator. Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the bill and speaking to that.
Senator has the floor.
I, too, carried this legislation this year, and I've kind of come to this conclusion to support this measure reluctantly over time, but given the numbers of people who have come to me and my colleague in the education community, school administrators, folks in public safety, and now the registrars and other election officials have really renewed that push and have made this one of their major legislative priorities for this session. And that is simply because they want the process on Election Day to be unimpeded by security officers, congestion at schools, confusion about where you can and cannot be. And it's really just a function of making it efficient and unclogging some of those areas on Election Day. Now, in the past, those who have not supported it have really not supported it for one reason, and one reason only, and that is that many people believe that once school is out, people will not be here to vote. And from my perspective, if people care and they're engaged, they will come 7 days later on Election Day and perhaps even be more inclined to come and vote when they can actually get there more easily. And certainly, speaking to the issues related to our folks in public safety who have found these election days very stressful and difficult to manage, they too have shared this position. So with that, I just wanted to offer that additional explanation and ask that the bill pass. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Eastern Fairfax? Senator Servell rise.
Speaking to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I don't like this bill at all. We have elections in November while school is in session. A lot more people show up than on primary day, probably 10 times as many people. And I'm not clear how having a tenth of the people show up is somehow some big problem at the end of school when nobody's doing anything anyway. I mean, I got 4 kids in school right now. They don't learn a single thing after June 1, if not by May 1, because after they're done teaching all the SOLs, they basically sit around and watch movies. And so I'm really not clear exactly what everybody's worried about. I'll also just note, you know, the first thing my wife wants to do when school lets out is go on vacation. The last 2 years, we're gone as soon as actually we leave before school's out. The last 2 or 3 days before school's out, we're gone and we're out of town. And I think there's a lot of people like that. And if you look at the, I just want to say, if you look at the age distributions I pulled up here on the Kaiser Foundation, in Virginia, 24% of people under the age of 18, they can't vote. Okay, 9% are between 19 and 25. I don't think they have kids in school. But if you look at the age bracket between 26 and 64, it's 52% of the population. So 74% of the population is likely to either be on vacation or not voting, which basically means if you want to have a primary where only the elderly are participating, this is your bill. If you want an Incumbent Protection Act, this is your bill, because the only thing we're doing is getting the vote turnout down to where nobody's going to vote except for really, really old people. So if that's what you like, put a green light on this. But if you don't, we need to stay red.
I already know for what purpose the senator rises. So, but go ahead.
Mr. President, to quote a famous sitcom character from many years ago, I resemble that remark.
What purpose is the senator from Roanoke City? Senator Edwards rise.
Mr. President, you may note that I was the only person on the committee to vote no. And the reasons have already been articulated. But first of all, The only reason for the bill is because school's in session. Well, these are primaries. School's also in session on the general election where many more people vote. But you offset the fact that school's in session in early June with the fact that, as everybody said, first of all, it's a primary, so fewer people vote. But many people go on vacation the end of June. Fewer people on vacation, I think it's the second Tuesday in June rather than the third Tuesday in June. It matters. We want to encourage people to vote. And so the question is, do you want to say, all right, it's easier on the school systems not to have voting in a primary the second Tuesday, I believe it is, in June? Or do you want more people to vote? I think we want to encourage people to vote in primaries, and that's why I voted no. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1243? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1243 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 18, noes 22.
Ayes 18, noes 22. Senate Bill 1243 fails.
Senate Bill 1255, a bill relating to Major Headquarters Workforce Grant Fund.
Senator from Mecklenburg, Senator Ruff.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the bill pass.
Thank you, Senator. You have the floor.
Speaking to that motion, this is a legislation that deals with Amazon facility that was announced in November. It provides for grants of $22,000 per employee that are paid no less than $150,000 a year for up to 25,000 employees. Those 25,000 employees will earn $3.75 billion, and those 25,000 employees will pay about $225 million of tax a year that will be spent throughout the Commonwealth for our needs. These incentives will not begin until the start of the fiscal year beginning July 1st, 2023. The incentives are to, at least in part, to reimburse the company for expenses in recruitment and training of employees. The bill sets up a means to set up a special non-recurring fund to hold funds needed to cover those reimbursements because they are not payable until the fiscal 2024 year. This will allow for longer-term planning as these jobs will pay payroll taxes prior to the start of the payments to the company. Should the company continue to grow beyond the original 25,000 employees, the incentive will decrease to $15,564 for up to 12,850 additional jobs. Furthermore, there is an inflation factor involved in the MOU with the company, in which after 2019, each year it will go up 1.5%. I renew my motion for the bill to pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Alexandria, Senator Eben, rise?
To speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
First, Mr. President, I want to thank the senator from Mecklenburg for his role, the members of the MEI, the Finance Committee, the VEDP, and Governor Northam. I think it's important that we recognize the $3.2 billion in net revenue from the income tax collected, state income tax, for the Commonwealth at large, and the Amazon investment of $2.5 million. And to break it down another way, for every dollar invested by the state will recoup $6. Additionally, the Virginia Tech campus in Alexandria, which is part of the attraction to Amazon, will provide a lot of skilled workers. And those skilled workers will help deal with the net migration of people from Virginia to other states. And that's going to benefit people throughout the state, hopefully in every corner of Virginia, qualified people to be employed throughout the state at some of the spin-off companies and otherwise. It's important to recognize that there are no tax breaks in this job, but as the senator said, the incentives. The incentives are one-time. The benefits will persist for years to come. It reduces an office vacancy rate in Arlington County which, believe it or not, is short on funds for school capacity and other matters. Of 4 to 5 million of 8 million square feet that's unoccupied, replacing a portion of 34,000 jobs lost to the when the Patent and Trademark Office, BRAC, and others left over the last 20 years. It provides business tenants the funds, the core services that we need for all business tenants. I anticipate that the net benefits of educating these students, not just at the Virginia Tech Innovation Campus, but at UVA and Mason in Northern Virginia, will grow our talent by 20, or it's anticipated it'll be by 25 to 30,000 qualified workers. And we know that there are other jobs in Virginia that are being unfilled from cybersecurity and other technology industries. For those who don't work for Amazon, this legislation or the commitment of those who provided this legislation and the administration to housing makes a difference. The synergy of $70 million a year, or $70 million over 10 years from Arlington County, with additional $75 million over 5 years from the Commonwealth, makes a real difference, because there are a lot of people who will find some challenges, or are finding challenges that are concerning over the short term. There also is $19 million in the Affordable Housing Trust Fund in this year's budget that I hope the Finance Committee will reaffirm. And this commitment will help make our area more vibrant and improve our state. So I appreciate the teamwork involved from Senator Ruff and all those who support this major investment. Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that members vote for the bill.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougall, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. To speak to the measure.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, these discussions resolving around this incentive package have been ongoing for a long period of time. And as the bill moved through the committee process, I put up an abstention as I continued to listen to the conversations. And Mr. President, I think that the gentleman from Fairfax indicated thanks to a lot of people in this chamber and throughout the Commonwealth for their efforts in bringing in economic development, and I think that that is well placed. But Mr. President, today I rise to talk about why I am going to throw up a red vote on this particular measure. Mr. President, this weekend, Reagan had her second basketball game, and after we left that, I went to talk to the man on the high castle to see his picture for the future of Virginia. But Mr. President, as he said, that's a lot of Jack, Ryan. Many of y'all don't clearly have Amazon Prime. I had to be reminded that in much of my district on the Northern Neck and Middle Peninsula, we don't have access to internet. We can't get Amazon Prime. We can't purchase things on Amazon. It's not available. And Mr. President, as we're spending this money, which is a tremendous amount to bring jobs, this kind of investment could have tremendous impact on individuals who currently live in the Commonwealth of Virginia. Could have impact on their ability to start new businesses, to expand businesses, to be educated, to have that kind of opportunity. So, Mr. President, I hope as this measure continues its winding path through this legislative process that we will get a clearer picture about the future, and that investment in technology needs to be at home first for Virginians that don't have access to it, that don't have access to Tobacco Commission resource funds, that need that technology, need that ability to have that information for their well-being, livelihood, and education. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1255? Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak against the bill.
Senator has the floor.
There's been a lot highlighting how great it will be for Amazon to come. There's been very little discussion on what actually was in that memorandum of understanding and what actually the Commonwealth's on the hook for. So just want to share a few excerpts from that I was able to get out of the Washington Post, which is owned by the same person that runs Amazon. So appreciate their good reporting on that. In the memorandum of understanding that's referenced in this bill, it states that, quote, in the event the Commonwealth or VDEP fails to comply with any of their obligations set forth in this memorandum, the company's obligations under this memorandum, including the appropriation, shall cease. So they're not on the hook, but we would be. A few paragraphs later, it makes it very clear that we'd be on the hook, but they wouldn't be when it says, the company has the right to terminate this memorandum at any time prior to the end date for any reason or no reason by delivering notice to VDEP at least 5 business days prior to the desired termination. Unless otherwise provided herein, the company shall be entitled to retain in full all grant payments received under this memorandum prior to its termination. I'm very grateful they're going to give us 5 days so we'd know what was happening. At least according to what was posted on the Washington Post in the memorandum. Further in the memorandum, it acknowledges that this memorandum is a public record, but it says the Commonwealth will give Amazon 2 days' notice and assistance in disclosing only the absolute minimum whenever a Virginian citizen seeks to use the Freedom of Information Act to obtain more information about the company's special arrangement with the Commonwealth. This is special arrangement, certainly. Back in August of 2013, when Amazon's top executive purchased the Washington Post that I referenced, that paper reported Amazon's significant lobbying efforts. At that point, it said that Amazon's lobbying efforts at the federal level had grown from $1.8 million in 2003 to $4.7 million in 2012. The next year, Amazon won a $600 million contract with the CIA. Last year, it was reported that Amazon's federal lobbying effort had been boosted now to $10.6 million, right up there to lobby the federal government. Around the same time, there were several reports in the tech pages saying that Amazon was widely perceived as the frontrunner for a $10 billion contract with the Pentagon. Of course, Amazon wants to come to Northern Virginia. Lots of folks want to come to Northern Virginia, and we usually don't have to pay them to do that. Newark, New Jersey, offered a combined $7 billion as incentives. It was reported that Maryland offered $8.5 billion and Pittsburgh offered $9.7 billion, which I'm sure is fun for them to explain to other companies why they won't give them that much and why Amazon turned them down still. Of course, Amazon wants to come to Northern Virginia. Lots of folks come to Northern Virginia. The Commonwealth's a great place to do business. We're trying to maintain that. But to pay one of the largest companies in the world tax dollars to put jobs in some of the wealthiest counties in the world is not a good use of tax dollars at all. I think the senator from Hanover pointed out several things that could have been great if Amazon wanted to come to the Commonwealth and provide assistance throughout the Commonwealth. That would have been a fantastic thing to do. I'm not one of the folks that's unhappy that Amazon's coming here. I welcome new corporate citizens to the Commonwealth. But what I don't welcome is us obligating future legislatures for the next, well, basically 4 decades to come to give away our tax dollars. Often those tax dollars that are generated by the very retailers that are fighting. I also have no problem with the disruptive nature of Amazon. I think that's great. But I don't think it's fair to ask existing Virginia businesses that are competing with them to subsidize their relocation. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Arlington, Senator Favola, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I speak in favor of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I certainly understand the comments from my colleagues wondering why a company as premier as Amazon would even need incentives. But I think we need to look at it from the perspective that actually Virginia gains from Amazon. I mean, we have a $3.2 billion estimate in new state funds coming to us over this 20-year period. So the comments made about, making sure that we have the new technology infrastructure in every part of the state, very valid. But the way we do that, actually, is coming up with incentives and partnering with our utility companies to provide that infrastructure. And I would argue that the Amazon package, in fact, is an enabler. And secondly, there are direct benefits to all Virginians. I mean, there's a $375 million investment, again, over the next 20 years to ensure that we have this technology campus in Alexandria. This would be Virginia Tech creating its cybersecurity program in Alexandria. This investment is huge. Not just Northern Virginians will be attending this campus in Alexandria. Virginia Tech is a nationally known university. Opportunities will be open for all Virginians. I think we need to look at this as a catalyst. We need to look at how we can make the most out of this opportunity. And that's what this is, an opportunity. Cities and localities around the country were competing for Amazon. And they were competing for it because of the economic domino effect, because of all the good things that happen when you have a strong and vibrant industry, when you have universities stepping up and asking to be partners, and when you're creating what you would call the creative class, and then all the tax dollars that come, because these individuals are, in fact, either entrepreneurs themselves, they're working for larger companies, but they're here sharing their talent. This is going to go statewide. I have no doubt that the entire state will benefit from this. For these and many other reasons, I ask that the Senate pass this measure.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico, rise?
Speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
So, Mr. President, members of the body, as you'll see, I supported this bill, and I supported it because I feel like that this is an investment in Virginia that does impact the whole state, and there are measures in place that can possibly recoup a lot of what we're investing into Amazon today. I know for the people that I represent in Southwest Virginia, this is far, far away from where they are and from what they'll see the effects of. And just like my colleague, a lot of people don't have access to the internet, so the use of Amazon is not effective for them and for what they do. However, as many people probably have read in the paper, and those that were on the General Laws Committee heard people from far Southwest Virginia come and speak to a bill that was before them saying that this is our Amazon, this is our investment, and that investment doesn't cost the state one penny. There is an investor that's willing to move forward and to make those investments, and they're not even asking you to support the idea. They're just asking you to support their opportunity to make the decision as to whether they want this business in Southwest Virginia that over 7 years could create 5,000 jobs and about $1 billion a year in revenue. That is something that's major for Southwest Virginia. I think that supporting this today makes sense for Virginia. I think it makes sense for the people in Northern Virginia because this investment can yield a lot of return in this state. And I would just hope as we move forward that those thoughts that you have for what you're doing in Northern Virginia will follow through in the far deep southwestern part of the state when you have an opportunity to vote on that legislation. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Loudoun, Senator Black, rise?
Speak to the measure.
Senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I have serious reservations about this. If we were moving Amazon down to Southwest Virginia, and we were paying a large subsidy, I'd say, I'm with you. I'm totally with you. I understand that, and if we can draw them down there, fine. But they're not coming to Northern Virginia because of the subsidy that we're paying them. They're coming to Northern Virginia because 73% of the entire world's internet traffic flows through Loudoun County. That's the entire world. There's only one place like that. And you look at what's going on where they're located. They're located right across from D.C., from the national capital. There are so many advantages
that I don't think it was close at all whether they were going to come. I think they're going to come. And so I think you really need to look and say, what can we do with that same amount of money? We've been trying for, I think almost long as I've been around here to fix I-81. And this money that we're giving to the wealthiest company on earth would go a long ways to moving that project ahead. I mean, in fact, I have no doubt we could get I-81 underway. We'd have to come up with other sources, but it would sure go a long ways. I think about things like, I got a letter from somebody from Arlington or Alexandra, I guess it was, with the problems that they have over the remediation for sewage. And they said, how come we can't have some assistance with that? Now, they're way out of my district. Nobody out there is voting for me, but I don't know why they wrote to me. But at the same time, we are a commonwealth. We could put some funds towards that. There are all kinds of things that we can do, but to just simply make a gratuitous gift to the richest company on the planet, it just, to me, doesn't make sense. We're taxing people on Social Security so that the wealthiest guy in the world and his former wife can divvy up a share of this thing. And and listening to the gentleman's comments earlier about the agreement, that's an illusory agreement. I mean, I would love to do a contract that says, I'm going to buy your car and I will give you $50,000 for it. You give me the car tomorrow, but I can give you 5 days notice and I can rescind my payments to you and walk away with your car. Hey, that would be a sweetheart deal. I'll take those all day long. So I'm not impressed with the deal that's been cut. I understand why people want the company here, and I certainly favor that, but I think we are spending money that we don't have to spend. It's not money that is going to make the company come. The company is coming, and I think it's money that could very much be used in every single district in this state, and I would rather see it spent there. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is a senior senator from Fairfax, Senator Saslaw, rise?
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I'm wondering if some people read the same bill that I read. Quite frankly, they don't get one dime, not a dime from the state, not a dime. They get a rebate of their tax money, not from our Treasury, but let me tell you what it is. It's a 2.5-year time lag for each dollar paid in to when they get a check. And in spite of that, and in spite of that billion, at the end of 20 years, the state will have netted, and you're worried about Interstate 81 and helping other people, $3 billion into our Treasury that wouldn't have come in had we not gotten these people to come here. I mean, I got to tell you, based on the events of what I've seen on a couple bills today, I think there's some people that just don't, in this room, that don't like seeing anybody get more than $7.25 an hour. These people are going to get $150,000 salary. Many of them will have already lived here and may have been earning close to that anyway. And 2.5 years after they pay in their taxes, Amazon starts getting money. We wouldn't have had that money. Let me repeat that to the senator from Roanoke County and the senior senator from Loudoun. We wouldn't have had that money had it not been for them coming in here. And like I said, if they don't pay it in, they don't get a dime. It's that simple. But when all is said and done in the first 20 years, the state nets $3 billion that they wouldn't have had that can help out some of the people from other parts of the state. And over the next 20 years, that $3.5 billion will probably go up 50 to 75%. Trust me, I won't be here, but Senator from Roanoke County might be here. So, and when I say I won't be here, I'm not kidding. But let me tell you this. This deal that was negotiated by the administration and the credit goes a lot to Aubrey Lane, this thing totally protects the state of Virginia. They want to terminate the deal, which I doubt, because they're going to be signing long-term leases with the people that own those buildings in Crystal City. So I don't think they're going to be terminating any deal. So quite frankly, this is a deal that wins for everybody. And we are a very fortunate state that where we are located, the proximity of us, and I don't apologize for the Pentagon being in Arlington County, not one bit. And if it draws more businesses here, so much the better. So I would hope that everybody in here would support this bill. An awful lot went into it. And like I said, it is a gold mine and a huge plus for the general fund of this state.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose does Senator from King George, Senator Stewart, rise?
Speak to the bill, Mr. President.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was an English major in college, and I went on to law school. Was not a math major. But the simple math on this thing, if you look at it, if I understand it correctly, based upon what they will get or receive in grants out of what they create, the state will get back fivefold in payroll taxes alone in the first 10 years. That's just payroll taxes alone. That's not talking about all the other taxes and economic activity that will be generated by a deal like this. And frankly, I would commend the governor, his office, Senator from Mecklenburg, and all those who worked on this because they did a really good job. And when you're going to create this many jobs in the Commonwealth, it helps lift up the whole Commonwealth. And I also represent a part of the Northern Neck, and I fully suspect that folks are going to be driving from there to Crystal City to work at Amazon, because I don't think many people can live in Arlington County for $150,000 a year. And I think I'm right about that. So my constituents will be happy to participate in that, but this is good for the whole Commonwealth, from the eastern part of Virginia all the way to the great Southwest. And I really hope everybody will support this.
Thank you, Senator. For what purpose does Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you. So I speak in favor of this agreement. I think that it's a good deal. I think that a lot of work went into this, and I commend all of those who had a part of putting this deal together. Bringing a company like Amazon to the Commonwealth is an important accomplishment and something that we can all be proud of. And when I look around this chamber, and I look around and I look from side to side, I see partners. I see colleagues. I see people with partnering issues. And as I look further, I see ambition. And I'd like to draw your attention, Mr. President, to the ambition of the entire Commonwealth, because all Virginians need be ambitious for all other Virginians. The truth is, not just some Virginians should receive the efforts of ambitious people, but all Virginians should receive the efforts of ambitious people. And so I support the ambitious people who worked out this great agreement with Amazon. And it is my hope that the initiatives that we have in Southwest Virginia, the initiatives that are on the Eastern Seashore, the initiatives that are on South Side, the initiatives that are in Central Virginia, the initiatives that are in the Valley, the initiatives that are all over this great Commonwealth can be partnered with the people in this chamber. Because the truth is, we will all be successful. Now, Senator Carrico and I, we hail from an area where the unemployment numbers are 2 and sometimes 3 times the size of those unemployment numbers that are spoken of proudly here in Richmond. And as well they should be. But remember, we have an industry and industries out there that have been besieged with hard times. They've been besieged with overregulation. They've been besieged with hard market conditions. And we've been working hard to diversify our economy in Southwest Virginia, as each of our partners have encouraged us to do. And again, it is my hope that as Virginians, we will all work together to be ambitious for the success, the overall success of all Virginians, because only that way can we achieve a true average of unemployment. Only that way can we achieve market indicators that we can all be proud of throughout this great Commonwealth. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator, for what purpose does the Senator from Petersburg, Senator Dance, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in favor of this great bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, this is a great bill because it starts out with a company that already realizes that $7.25 is not enough, and they've set standard because they think it should be $15, and they put their money where their mouth is. They are increased the salaries of people that work for them to $15 an hour. That says if you start there, then you're right, you will rise from that, all the rest of the people that work for that great company. Having 2 fulfillment centers already within my district, and now realizing that Amazon will come as an example for others to follow as far as what represents a fair wage for Virginians, I think this is an awesome bill that we should support. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline, rise?
Just to address something that had been said when my name was mentioned.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I didn't plan to speak again. I don't want to trespass on your time. But I just want to highlight a great comment we just heard from the Democratic leader in defense of a company that on Saturday closed with a market cap of $829 billion. It's good to see the defense of such a company and all the speeches we've heard on a bill that we know is going to get more than 30 votes. But with all that said, I just want to highlight the one thing that we remember today is that if a company pays taxes and they get a rebate, that is not one dime of tax dollars, we heard. So if we ever are talking about tax rebates ever again, and if it's anyone that doesn't happen to have $829 billion market cap, but you're just a regular Virginian and you're going to get some of the money you paid back, that's not tax dollars. That's you just getting the money that the Commonwealth wouldn't have had you not put labor in to produce that wealth that was taxed by the Commonwealth. I appreciate that sentiment, and I look forward to working with him on that sentiment in the future.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise just to invite the Senator from King George's County to come on a tour of all the various housing options we have in Arlington. And you'd be amazed at how many different income brackets we can accommodate. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. For what purpose does the senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove, rise?
Quit sighing. I don't talk on every bill like a lot of other people in this place. And I will tell you right now, I don't have any statewide ambitions, nor do I see any in the future. But, yeah. In the late 90s, I actually worked for Naval Air Systems Command. It was in 2 buildings, JP-1 and JP-2, directly across 95 from the Pentagon. During my tenure there, the Base Realignment Commission, Base Realignment Acquisition Commission, met and decided it'd be better if NavAir was to move to Patuxent River, Maryland, that SPAWAR was to move, and that NAVSEA was to move. Crystal City then was pretty much a ghost town. And then we dealt with something called sequestration. Crystal City's allure was a little less shiny during that time. It's been said time and again about things like Interstate 81 or 95. Look, I live in Hampton Roads, but I grew up in Northern Virginia. Where do you think most of the road money in this Commonwealth comes from, everybody? Yeah, it ain't Franklin County. But it's Northern Virginia. Now, they have that special taxing area, just like Hampton Roads does, where we're trying to build our own roads and still sustain the roads of the Commonwealth. So, in my part of the state, we know that the adage is true that a rising tide floats all boats. And Amazon is that rising tide. It's going to do nothing but help this Commonwealth of Virginia. So you've heard the negativity, but Bezos as it may. Okay. All right. This is a prime example of a great economic deal for the Commonwealth of Virginia. This deal will benefit the far southwest, the south side, central, Hampton Roads, and Northern Virginia. Folks, this is a win for the Commonwealth. Let's not tarnish it. Please pass this bill.
Thank the senator. Are there any other senators who wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1255? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1255 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk, close the roll.
Ayes 35, noes 5.
Ayes 35, noes 5. Senate Bill 1255 passes.
Senate Bill 1304, a bill relating to regulation of smoking in outdoor amphitheater or concert venue, civil penalty.
Senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards.
Mr. President, I move that the bill pass, and speaking in favor of the bill.
Senator has the floor.
This was a matter that was passed last year by both houses with a reenactment clause. So now we have the privilege of reenacting it and putting it on the books. Mr. President, this was asked for by Roanoke City, but every locality would benefit. And what it provides for is that each localities could regulate smoking in outdoor amphitheaters or concert venues. In particular, it would provide that any locality, by ordinance, which, by the way, requires a local hearing and all the rest by the local governing body, the ordinance could designate reasonable non-smoking areas within an outdoor amphitheater or a concert venue owned by the locality. And by the way, Roanoke has a great outdoor amphitheater. Mr. President, this bill would require that the ordinance set forth adequate signage, so nobody's caught by surprise, and the signage would designate those areas in the outdoor amphitheater that are non-smoking areas. By implication, there could be areas that you could smoke in. And it would provide further that nobody would be subject to any kind of sanction unless, one, they're asked not to smoke. And then they obnoxiously, in most cases, would say, no, I'm going to smoke anyway. And in that case, then a summons could be issued by any law enforcement officer, and they'd be subject to the whopping penalty of a civil penalty of $25, which is less than a parking ticket in most places. And it would also provide that those funds would go to pay for public health purposes only. It's very minor. It would help those localities that is in Roanoke. We've had complaints from people in outdoor amphitheaters, somebody smoking next door to them. They have children there, and the children don't want to be, if the parents don't want the children to have smoke all around them. And they would allow the localities to regulate in a very modest way smoking in outdoor amphitheaters. And with that explanation, I move again that the bill pass.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Chesterfield? Senator Chase rise.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in favor of Senate Bill 1304.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. I know that to some this may be the freedom to smoke bill, but I would challenge you to have a different perspective for those of us who have young children with allergies. I would encourage you to look at this as a freedom to breathe bill. And as you're voting today, think about our children across the Commonwealth who have allergies, and this would further exacerbate the problems that they experience. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1304? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Bill 1304 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 26, noes 14.
Ayes 26, noes 14. Senate Bill 1304 passes.
Senate Bill 1373, a bill relating to conditional rezoning proffers.
Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill pass. And speaking to the motion.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. What this bill does is it makes some needed reforms to the bill that eventually became law in 2016. This is commonly referred to as the Proffer Bill. There were many, many meetings with lots of stakeholders, including high-growth communities and other localities throughout the Commonwealth, and then a range of different builders, and then, of course, business interests and environmental interests. We all agreed that there were two sort of primary problems with our current law, which this bill addresses. One problem was the inability for the applicant to actually communicate with a locality once an application has been filed for development. And what this bill does specifically is it says the applicant and the locality may have pre-filing or post-filing conversations about the impacts of the development. This opens up the lines of communication so folks can get on the same page. And this was an important piece because builders, as you might expect, don't like uncertainty. They would rather see the lay of the land before they actually officially put in an application for a project. This opens up that door. And then secondly, what this bill does is it provides two avenues for development projects to go forward. One avenue is the status quo, where the structure of the Proffer Bill remains the same. The definition of public facilities has not changed, which is actually fairly narrow. But it allows for a waiver. So a developer could say to a locality, I want to waive out of the proffer structure. I want to be able to offer any proffer that's appropriate, either on-site or off-site. And the jurisdiction can take it from there. This was a very important remedy because our high-growth communities do a lot of planning. They're the communities that are some of our job centers. They're enjoying a large bump up in population, so they have to plan. And they want the ability to be able to work with the developer. Developer wants the ability to offer any type of proffer because the environment they're working in is hopefully a partnership. So, and then finally the bill says the locality cannot deny a project because a proffer was not offered. So that very specifically reinforces an important tenet of our current law. This bill is not perfect by any stretch, but the majority of stakeholders in each of the groups we talked about believe it's progress. It's moving forward. This is the kind of bill where you have to wait and see how it's actually implemented. I believe we've made progress, and I would implore that the Senate actually support this bill. We just had a very healthy conversation on Amazon, and we want to make sure we have a range of different housing options available to those who may be moving to work with Amazon. And we again want to give our jurisdictions the opportunity to plan. I guess I'm going to stop while I'm ahead, but please vote for this bill. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Loudoun, Senator Blackrise?
Speak in favor of the measure.
The senator has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I join the gentlelady from Arlington in encouraging you to vote in favor of this. The proffer bill of 2016 was very well intentioned and I think has accomplished some good things and gotten us away from some of the excesses that existed. But there were very significant unintended consequences. And what we had is we got a situation where we couldn't get rezonings done because in many of the counties, the county attorneys were cautioning the supervisors not to talk to developers about plans that they had. And as a consequence, the system froze up in some of the areas. Loudoun and Prince William counties were key in those, but there were others in different parts of the state. This is sort of an unusual thing because it's not a situation where local government and the development industry are necessarily in conflict. It's one of those things where the two of them really had to reach a point where they could safely sit down, a supervisor could sit down with somebody who had a project at lunch, and the fellow could say, or woman could say, here's something I'm planning and here's some things I can do for the county. And then in exchange or in return, the supervisor could say, well, this particular one really doesn't work with what we're trying to accomplish, but if you could do this. Anyway, just a free-flowing dialogue. And I think this bill, I think it does achieve that free-flowing dialogue where the two parties can talk. And once we've achieved that, the wheels will start turning again, and I think it'll benefit both local government and the industry. And I really do believe that we have reached the point that we need to accomplish that. And so I certainly advise that members look favorably on this measure. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose is the senator from Franklin County, Senator Stanley, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. Rise to speak to the measure.
Thanks, Senator. You have the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I will only add this because this, of course, started its origins were in the exciting, always conflictual local government committee, which I know that you all like to avoid because we really take it on the big issues. And I know that because you stay away, we can tackle even the bigger issues that are before us, as this one is. And let me say this, that my committee over the summer, we decided that this was as an important issue, not only for localities that were suffering under this impasse, but also those that hadn't yet and might in the future. And so we had what was called the proffer party, where we took this bill and also Senator Stewart's bills on impact fees, and we sat down. Somebody brought pizza, somebody brought beer, and we sat and decided for ourselves that we were going to receive testimony and look at this in a way that we had never looked at before, because whatever we had done had created an impasse that was hurtful to economic development in certain areas, hurtful to growth in those areas, and the tax base in some of these counties. And so our senators in that committee took on this issue, and I must commend the senator from Arlington, who with passion and maybe begrudging it a little bit, decided that she would volunteer to make sure that we had a solution. Because I told both sides that if they didn't resolve it, that I'd resolve it for them, and they'd hate it. That's right. I did that. All 5'9" of me, too. And you know, it was tough. For a long time, it was tough. That impasse created more impasse. But yet the senator from Arlington stuck to it. And there were many phone calls, many discussions, many movements this way, many times that won, many times. But I must commend her for sticking with it, even right down to Christmas, while I was shopping for my family, I was on the phone with the senator from Arlington as she was trying to work out the finer details of what is now this agreement. And yeah, not every county is on board, but almost every county. The home builders have come to the middle and met at the middle. They have as well, and this is the agreement they have. All stakeholders who participated have come to believe that this is the best resolution of this problem because, Mr. President, I told them, I don't think this Senate or the body across the hallway should be dealing with these issues over and over again. Nor should we be peeling this back one layer at a time till nothing's there. It is one of those agreements, as we who practice law would say, if both sides are upset, Mr. President, it must be a good deal. So I urge the body to pass this piece of legislation. And again, I want to thank the senator from Arlington for her leadership on this issue. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Rockingham, Senator Obenshain, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak in opposition to the bill because someone has to.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I would say that the gentleman from Franklin County's revelation about the beer being introduced into the summer meetings may illuminate some of my mystification about the origins of this bill. This, Mr. President, seems to be the last, I hope, in the series of big business bills this day. This is not just a reform, but this really represents coming back 2 years after we addressed this issue and completely unwinding what we did 2 years ago. And let me just describe what the problem is. And I don't begin to suggest that we're going to defeat this measure, but I just want to make sure that the members of the body understand what this does. I mean, the problem was isolated to a number of counties around Virginia where proffers were being demanded of landowners that were out of proportion to the impact of a development upon that community. And in many of those counties, they had proffer accounts of proffered funds in the hundreds of millions of dollars sitting in the county treasuries. And these proffer demands by these localities across Virginia really represented the ability of certain counties, not universally, but certain counties across the Commonwealth to shake down property owners and to ask for money in order to do things that were wholly unrelated to the impact of that particular development. And it was driving up the cost of home ownership in those localities dramatically to a point where people couldn't afford to live in those communities and were having to hopscotch over to the next county or the next county in order to be able to buy a home, in order to be able to afford to work in some of those high-cost counties. And it's causing impacts in counties in the areas that I represent where we're getting all of the homes but none of the jobs. And many counties are getting all of the jobs and none of the homes. So they're not having to transport these folks. They're not having to educate them. They're not having to build the infrastructure that comes with it. And 2 years ago, when we considered this bill, there were a handful of localities who vehemently opposed this bill, who said this is just not reasonable. And those were the counties and localities with the hundreds of millions of dollars in their proffer accounts. And those are the same counties that have stubbornly refused over the course of these past 2 years to consider certain developments because they were unable to shake down these efforts to develop and rezone these pieces of property. So what this bill does is it just completely unwinds this, and instead of saying that these counties, these localities cannot request or accept any unreasonable proffer, it changes this language to say that they can't require any unreasonable proffer, and it's limited to simply the local governing body. So what they can do is allow large developers to come in and buy rezonings. Make no mistake about it. This is for big developers who are going to come into these counties and say, I'm going to pay you, local government, in order to approve my rezoning, and the little guy can't afford to do it. They can't afford to do it. It's going to drive up the cost of home ownership. It's going to drive up the cost of constructing homes for the benefit of those who are going to be able to afford those high-priced homes in those high-priced localities. And I would further point out that later in the bill, it simply says, it used to say that these developers who sought the rezoning, for whom these proffers were demanded or requested, could say, you denied my rezoning as a consequence of that unreasonable proffer. It guts that provision as well, because what it says is, all right, if you didn't demand it, but suggested it, first of all, it may have been just the zoning official who suggested it, or the planning official. That's not the local government. That's not the local governing body, which is language. So the planning official can demand it or suggest it and say, I'm not going to recommend it to the local governing body if you don't offer this proffer. That does not violate the terms of this quote-unquote compromise bill. And even if a court concludes that it violates the reasonableness component of this, all that is required is that the court can lower the amount of the proffer. It does not prohibit it. It does not do anything to inhibit the abusive practices that led to the adoption of this legislation 2 years ago that the senior senator from Fairfax and I carried. I think it's regrettable to cave in to the demands of a handful of unreasonable localities who are sitting upon hundreds of millions of dollars of unexpended proffer funds, and I would hope that there are a handful of folks who will not do that and who will vote no.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Grayson, Senator Carrico, rise?
Speak to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, I have wondered for 2 years how I got on local government. And when I heard my seatmate speak about all 5'9" of him standing up to these bullies, I realized it was because my 6'4" frame was standing behind him. I hope you'll vote for the bill.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Bill 1373? Seeing none, Senator from Arlington, Senator Favola.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to add a few things so there's clarity here. The home builders actually asked that a reform bill be crafted. So the home builders really wanted to have the partnership with local governments smoothed out a bit and the opportunity to actually develop and make some money in Northern Virginia and other parts of the Commonwealth. And I do want to say that there's specific language stating that failure to submit a proffer shall not be the basis for denial of a rezoning. So that remains in the law. And if in fact there is a denial of a rezoning in this bill, the court has to, absent clear and convincing evidence that the rezoning was not based because of the absence of a proffer, would have to demonstrate clear and convincing evidence. So there's definitely still the language in this bill that creates the box, which I know the senator for Rockingham believes I have opened quite widely. Trust me, I have not opened the box as widely as many stakeholders would like. So this is a compromise. Many of the tenets that were in that first bill are still here. And I would ask the ladies and gentlemen of the Senate to please take this opportunity to smooth over the relationships between local governments and the home builders and move forward with this bill. Thank you.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1373 pass? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 29, noes 10, Rule 36-1.
Ayes 29, noes 10, Rule 36-1. Senate Bill 1373 passes.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on second reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Good evening, Mr. President.
Good evening.
I respectfully move that all the Senate bills on the second reading on the uncontested calendar, which would include all Senate bills on pages 8 through 17, including Senate Bill 1023 through Senate Bill 1653, be advanced in their engrossment to the third reading in the block after the adoption of any amendments. If any senator desires to remove a bill from the block, please do so after the clerk has read the number of that bill.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall all Senate bills on second reading on the uncontested calendar on pages 8 through 17, Senate Bill 1023 through Senate Bill 1653, be engrossed in advance to their third reading in the block after the adoption of the amendments thereto, and that any senator desiring to remove a bill from the block do so after the clerk has read the number of the bill? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion is agreed to. The clerk will read the number of the bills.
Senate Bill 1023.
Mr. President.
Senior Senator from Chesapeake, Senator Cosgrove.
Thank you. I'd ask that Senate Bill 1023 come out of the block and by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1023 will come out of the block and go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1020, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 1048, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice. Senate Bill 1141, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1142, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1159, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1167, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendments.
Senator from Russell, Senator Chafin.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Does the senator want to move the committee amendments first?
I do want to move the committee amendments first.
Excellent.
I do move them.
I thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to, and then this one's in the block, so we'll move it together.
Senate Bill 1174, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 1181, reported from the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Mr. President, I move the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1183, reported from the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
Senator from King George, Senator Stewart.
Mr. President, I move the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1209, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
Senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I move that the committee substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1254, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 1289, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1382, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 1397, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendments.
Senator from Lynchburg, Senator Peake.
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I move that the amendment be adopted and the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
We'll take the first one. This is still in the block. So.
I didn't want to waste time. Okay, so I was trying to get to the point. I move that the amendment be adopted, Mr. President.
I thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted.
Senate Bill 1405, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1432, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 1433, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendments.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendment.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to.
Senate Bill 13 1439, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted.
Senate Bill 1440, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendments.
The junior senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee amendment.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted.
Senate Bill 1468, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendments.
Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Mr. President, I recommend the adoption of the committee amendments.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are adopted.
Senate Bill 1474.
Mr. President.
Senator from Alexandria, Senator Evan.
Could Senate Bill 1468 come out of the block?
Without objection, Senate Bill 1468 will come out of the block.
Senate Bill 1474, reported from the Committee on Transportation. Senate Bill 1481, reported from the Committee on Transportation with amendment.
Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds. Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is adopted.
Senate Bill 1488, reported from the Committee on Education and Health.
From Augusta, Senator Hanger.
Mr. President, I ask that the bill come out of the block and by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1488 will come out of the block and go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1511, reported from the Committee on Education and Health. Senate Bill 1593, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendment.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendment be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendment is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1595, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
Senator from Henrico, Senator Donovan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the substitute be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is agreed to.
Senate Bill 1653, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with amendments.
Senator from Franklin, Senator Stanley.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the committee amendments be agreed to.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee amendments be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee amendments are agreed to. The question is, shall the Senate bills be engrossed and advanced to their third reading? That is all bills except for Senate Bills 1023, 1468, and 1488. All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills are engrossed and advanced to their third reading.
Returning to Senate Bill 1468.
Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to third reading.
Thank the senator. The senator from Alexandria wish to be heard? Sorry.
I will wait to speak to it till third reading.
Okay. All right. Thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1468 be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Regular calendar, Senate bills on second reading. Senate Bill 1016, a bill relating to form of ballot, optional party identification of certain candidates, reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with amendments.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd ask that prior to the consideration of any amendments that Senate Bill 1016 go by for the day.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1016 will go by for the day.
Senate Bill 1165, a bill relating to local gas severance tax sunset date, reported from the Committee on Finance.
The senator from Russell, Senator Chafin.
Mr. President, I've gotten to the page I had marked. I move that the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
I thank the senator. The question is, shall Senate Bill 1165 be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1012, a bill relating to carrying a concealed weapon, firefighters, and emergency medical service providers. Reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice with a substitute.
Senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the committee substitute.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we engross and advance Senate Bill 1012 to its third constitutional reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1044, a bill relating to parking ordinances enforcement. Reported from the Committee on Transportation with a substitute.
Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Mr. President, you pass that bill by temporarily.
Without objection, Senate Bill 1044 will go by temporarily.
Senate Bill 1073, a bill relating to removing motor vehicles from roadway. Reported from the Committee on Transportation, and there are 4 floor amendments.
Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I moved to waive the reading of the floor amendments.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendments be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendments is waived. Senator from Western Fairfax, Senator Marsden.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move to adopt the amendments in a block. And speaking to that motion,
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. These technical line amendments clarify that any lane, hot lanes or regular lanes involved in the construction of hot lanes on Interstate 66 and who have had the shoulders removed are subject to the expeditious removal of vehicles after minor accidents to the next pull-off area, which may include an exit ramp or agreed upon location. This is just to make sure that all of the lanes are under construction are included, because they do move back and forth between which lanes are open and which lanes are closed, which lanes have shoulders, which lanes that do not. And with that, I renew my motion to pass the floor amendments in a block.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the floor amendments be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendments are adopted.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1236, a bill relating to public schools, equal access to education, employee associations, and professional educator liability insurance providers. Reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeStaff.
Mr. President, I'd like to move the community substitute.
Senator, I understood you perfectly. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeStaff.
Mr. President, I'd like to move the engrossment and advancement to the third constitutional reading. Thank you.
Senator, what was that? I didn't catch that.
Mr. President, I'd like to move engrossment and onto its third constitutional reading. Thank you.
Thank the senator very much. Question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third constitutional reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1275, a bill relating to junior reserve officer training programs, students receiving home instruction. Reported from the Committee on Education and Health.
The junior senator from Virginia Beach, Senator DeStaff.
Mr. President, I move that we engross and advance this to third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1295, a bill relating to public schools, tobacco products, and nicotine vapor products prohibition, reported from the Committee on Education and Health with a substitute.
Senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move the substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator
Mr.
Spruill.
President, now I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1487, a bill relating to driver's license designation traumatic brain injury, reported from the Committee on Transportation, and there is a floor amendment.
Senator from Bass, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, the floor amendment having been distributed, I move that its reading be waived.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the reading of the floor amendment be waived? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The reading of the floor amendment is waived. Senator from Bass, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, this bill requires DMV, upon the request of an applicant and presentation of a signed statement by a doctor confirming the applicant's condition, to designate a traumatic brain injury on the driver's license. And we do that for a number of other conditions as well. The floor amendment simply requires the doctor to be a licensed neurologist. I move the amendment.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The floor amendment is adopted. Senator from Bass, Senator Deeds.
Mr. President, I move that the bill be engrossed and passed to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Senate Bill 1675, a bill relating to killing or injuring police animals penalty, reported from the Committee for Courts of Justice.
Senator from Spotsylvania, Senator Reeves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would ask that the bill be engrossed in advance to its third constitutional reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Returning to page 19, Senate Bill 1044.
Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
Mr. President, I move the committee substitute.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Loudoun, Senator Black.
I now move that we engross this and advance it to third reading.
Thank you. The question is, shall the bill be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bill is engrossed in advance to its third reading.
Uncontested calendar, Senate bills on first reading.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I move that.
Mr. President, I now move that all the Senate bills on the first reading on both the regular
and the uncontested calendar,
including all Senate bills on pages 21 through 23, including Senate Bill 1273 through Senate Bill 1642, that the rules of the Senate be suspended and that the first constitutional reading of the titles be dispensed with.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the rules be suspended and the first reading of the titles of Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars, pages 21 through 23, Senate Bill 1273 through Senate Bill 1642, be dispensed with? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 39, no 0.
Ayes 39, no 0. The reading of the titles is dispensed with. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I would now ask that all the bills be passed by for the day, sir.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate bills on the uncontested and regular calendars now on second reading be passed by for the day? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The bills will go by for the day.
Uncontested calendar, Senate joint resolutions on third reading. Senate Joint Resolution 292, confirming appointments by the governor of certain persons communicated May 17, 2018.
Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the resolution.
Thank the Senator. Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline. For what purpose does the Senator rise?
On consideration of Senate Joint Resolution 292, Mr. President,
yes,
I would request that on page 1, lines 23 and 24 related to the confirmation of the DEQ director, that vote be taken separately from the rest of the resolution.
Without objection? Objection? Senator wish to speak to the objection?
Never mind.
Senator, withdraw the objection?
I withdraw.
Senator, without objection, page 1, lines 23 through 24 will be voted on separately. The question is, with regard to Senate Joint Resolution 292, without objection, on page 1, lines 23 through 24 will be voted on separately. The question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 292 be agreed to except for page 1, lines 23 through 24? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. Senate Joint Resolution 292 is agreed to. Will please take their seats. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thanks, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we reconsider the vote by which we just passed some of the names on SJR 292.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall the vote by which Senate Joint Resolution 292 was agreed to be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 37, noes 0.
Ayes 37, no 0. The motion is agreed to. Senator from Hanover, Senator McDougal.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I move that we reconsider the vote by which we engrossed SJR 292 to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the vote by which SJR 292 was engrossed in advance to its third reading be reconsidered? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The motion is agreed to.
We have a floor amendment offered by Senator Suderline on SJR 292, page 1. Strike lines 23 and 24.
Senator from Roanoke County, Senator Suderline.
I would move adoption of the amendment.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the floor amendment be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no.
Mr. Michel.
The noes have it. The floor amendment fails.
Give them the hands. You don't have to join in with them. Just give them some hands. You got 8.
We got 8.
There being at least 8 hands, we'll have a recorded vote. All those wishing to adopt the floor amendment will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
6, noes 33.
Ayes 6, noes 33. The floor amendment fails.
Mr. President.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mr. President, I apologize for the interruption. I didn't want to slow down the velocity with which we've been moving today. But on these resolutions, in the future as we go forward, with the exception of the resolutions dealing with the election of judges, if in fact you want to take exception to one of the recommendations on that, it would be appropriate to offer a line item amendment on it so that we will do this consistent going forward. So I just wanted to announce that. But on judges, each of those judicial elections are an independent and freestanding item.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we engross and advance the resolution to its third reading.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the resolution be engrossed in advance to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is engrossed in advance to its third reading. Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
I move that we waive the reading and suspend the rules. And I'm not sure what we do next. And take it up for immediate consideration. Thank you, Mr. President.
All of that. That's great. The question is, shall the reading, third reading, be waived and the rules be suspended and SJR 292 be taken up for immediate consideration? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. The reading is waived. SJR 292 is taken up for immediate consideration. Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the resolution pass, and speaking to that motion.
Senator has the floor.
For those members of the body who are about to vote on this, this is just to remind you that these are the governor's appointments, and I would urge you to please adopt the resolution.
Thank the Senator. Question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 292 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 38, noes 0.
Ayes 38, no 0. Senate Joint Resolution 292 is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 293, confirming appointments by the governor of certain persons communicated to the governor, to the General Assembly, June 1st, 2018 and June 13th, 2018.
Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that we pass the resolution. And again, it's a governor's appointments resolution. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator from Williamsburg, Senator Mason.
Mr. President, I'm abstaining pursuant to Rule 36 on page 2, lines 98 and 99, but voting on Senate Joint Resolution 293 as a whole. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the Senator. The Journal will so note. Do any other senators wish to be heard on SJR 293? Question is, shall SJR 293 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. SJR 293 is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 295, confirming appointments by the governor of certain persons communicated to the General Assembly October 1st, 2018.
Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the resolution.
Thank the Senator. Junior Senator from Richmond City, Senator McClellan.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am abstaining pursuant to Rule 36 on page 4, lines 194 to 195, but voting on SJR 295 as a whole.
I thank the senator. The journal will so note. Senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator Spruill. Okay. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Joint Resolution 295? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 295 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Joint Resolution 295 is agreed to.
Senate Joint Resolution 296, confirming appointments by the governor of certain persons communicated to the General Assembly December 1st, 2018.
Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. One last time, I move adoption of the resolution, the appointments resolution. Thank you.
I thank the senator.
Mr. President.
Senator from Northern Chesapeake, Senator
Thank you,
Spruill.
Mr. President. Mr. President, I am abstaining pursuant to Rule 36 on page 6, line 356, 357, but voting on SJR 296 as a whole.
I thank the senator. The journal will so note. Do any other senators wish to be heard on Senate Joint Resolution 296? Seeing none, the question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 296 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? The clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 40, noes 0.
Ayes 40, noes 0. Senate Joint Resolution 296 is agreed to.
Regular calendar, Senate Joint Resolution on third reading. Senate Joint Resolution 275, reaffirming that all persons residing in the Commonwealth of Virginia are afforded equal protection under the law.
Senator from Chesterfield, Senator Chase.
Thank you, Mr. President. And speaking to SJ 275.
Senator has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President. We have had many discussions on the floor in here last week about the Equal Rights Amendment, and a number of us have different backgrounds and experiences with that. Having worked for 3 congressmen and understanding, I guess, the long-term effects of this, I've always believed that the Equal Rights Amendment was not properly before the Senate. Yet at the same time, I did want to affirm women. And so that was the gist behind introducing SJ 275. It's a reaffirmation, equal protection under the law. The resolution reaffirms that all persons residing in Virginia are afforded equal protection under the law. The resolution cites numerous guarantees of equality that currently exist in both federal and state law. I will spare you all the read. I know the hour is late, but it is in the resolution. This is a joint affirmation on a state level that we respect men and women. We see each other as equal under the law. Unfortunately, many times, civility is lacking in our communities. But I am so pleased and honored to be a part of this body because I can say that most of the time it's not. And it's very refreshing and one of the best surprises, I think, about coming to the Senate, even though we each come from different backgrounds and perspectives, that we always try to find common ground to advance the issues that are before the Commonwealth. And my hope is this is a way that we can unify together as a body, whether we support the Equal Rights Amendment and its intent. This way, it allows many of us who support equal rights, but not necessarily the expired amendment as the vehicle to participate. I ask that you support this resolution, not as part of the Equal Rights Amendment, but separately, acknowledging how far women have come as a country, state, and community in the Senate. Women have flourished in their education, professions, and leadership roles throughout our Commonwealth, especially the last 40 years. Voting in favor of the joint resolution will give a statement to our constituents that we are proud of the women in our Commonwealth and will always try our best to keep their opportunities thriving. And with that, Mr. President, I ask that we support the bill.
Thank the senator. For what purpose the senator from Northern Fairfax, Senator Howe, rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise to speak in opposition
Senator has
to
the floor.
this resolution. I've been here a long time, and I can't remember when I've seen such a frivolous and just plain silly resolution on the floor. The U.S. Constitution guarantees rights to Virginians, and the Virginia Code in numerous places already states those rights. Are we going to start restating everything that we've put in the code just so we can say we affirm what we've already passed? I don't think so. And it says that we will follow the U.S. Supreme Court. Well, that's our obligation. Of course we're going to follow the U.S. Supreme Court. So why, other than just being a little bit ludicrous, would we pass something like this? We had an opportunity last week, and a majority of the people in the Senate passed Equal Rights Amendment that actually means something. It actually means something. And I hope we won't go down this path where whenever we vote against something, but we think we want people to know we actually support something sort of like it, we reaffirm what the U.S. Constitution, the U.S. Supreme Court, and the Code of Virginia already states. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senator from Roanoke City, Senator Edwards, rise?
Mr. President, speaking against this measure.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, if the purpose of this is to advance the cause of women, it does not do that. The 14th Amendment was passed right after the Civil War to ensure that all states provided equal protection of the law to all men. Of course, it wasn't until 1920 that women even got the right to vote. Last week, by 26 votes, this body voted to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, which does advance the cause of women. The 14th Amendment, Equal Protection Clause, does not advance the cause of women. The U.S. Supreme Court, in fact, has held that the 14th Amendment Equal Protection Clause applies to discrete minorities. Women are a majority, actually. They're not a discrete minority, and that's why the Supreme Court has not applied the Equal Protection Clause to the rights of women. It does not do that. So if this idea is to advance the cause of women in some way, it does not do that. And since last week, 26 of us voted to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, it would be a step backwards to vote for this. And I urge you to reject this idea. Even though it might be well-intentioned, it certainly does not do what it purports to do. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does the senior senator from Richmond City, Senator Sturtevant, rise?
Mr. President, I rise to speak briefly to the resolution.
Senator has the floor.
Mr. President, members of the Senate, I plan to support this resolution in its amended form that's before us today. In my view, this is very simply an aspirational resolution in that we are always working to ensure that every Virginian in the Commonwealth is afforded equal protection under the law. And that's a process that is always ongoing. But of course, this resolution before us does not and cannot say that the government is prohibited by the Constitution from discrimination on account of sex. And that is because, as Justice Scalia said less than a decade ago, the Constitution does not currently provide that protection. That fact is not addressed or disputed by this resolution. And that, as you know, is the point of the Equal Rights Amendment and why this General Assembly is considering its ratification. But in addition to being aspirational, I would also submit that this resolution is perhaps some of the best evidence as to why the Equal Rights Amendment is needed in the first place. As the resolution notes, there are numerous laws on the books that work to protect equality between men and women, and no one disputes that. But this is what the resolution says in part. Quote, equal protection for women can be found in a plethora of federal as well as state laws, including Title IX provisions, contract award guidelines, grants, and scholarships. But some of those outside of this chamber and outside of this Commonwealth who tell us that the ERA is not needed because of these very laws have on occasion been those throughout history who have also opposed those very same laws, whether they be Title IX or contract award guidelines or grants or other laws that protect equality between men and women. Indeed, those laws were not passed without opposition, some of which still exist today. And therefore, this resolution simply underscores the fact that statutory legal protections, as opposed to constitutional protections, are only permanent until the next legislative session. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank the senator. Do any other senators wish to be heard? Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm glad that nothing controversial ever comes before privileges and elections. I would just like to make a quick observation because I asked this question in the committee, and I will restate the answer for the members of this body, and that was when this bill came forward, I asked the advocates on both sides if there was any reason why these must be or should be or have to be mutually exclusive. Some of the language that was offensive to some people has been removed from this resolution. I voted in the last resolution to affirm equality, and I intend to vote for this resolution to affirm equality. And I understand that it may not go as far as some people would like, but I would just like to say that I don't believe that they're mutually exclusive, and I intend to vote for the resolution. Thank you.
Thank the senator. For what purpose does Senator from Bath, Senator Deeds, rise?
Mr. President, to speak very briefly to the bill.
Senator has the floor.
Those people who try to equate this resolution with the Equal Rights Amendment are creating a false equivalency. The Equal Rights Amendment will create real benefit, will create real rights that women will have to enforce their rights, to enforce equality. This amendment is the worst sort of pandering to allow us to tell our constituents that we did something when we don't actually do anything. This will have no effect, and we're wasting time now.
Thank the senator. Question is, shall Senate Joint Resolution 275 be agreed to? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The chair is uncertain. We'll have a recorded vote. All those in favor of agreeing to Senate Joint Resolution 275 will record their vote aye. Those opposed, no. Are the senators ready to vote? Have all the senators voted? Do any senators desire to change their vote? Clerk will close the roll.
Ayes 21, noes 19.
Ayes 21, noes 19. Senate Joint Resolution 275 is agreed to.
Uncontested calendar, Senate Joint Resolution on second reading. Senate Joint Resolution 294, confirming appointments by the governor of certain persons communicated August 1st, 2018. Reported from the Committee on Privileges and Elections with a substitute.
Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move adoption of the committee substitute.
Thank you, Senator. The question is, shall the committee substitute be adopted? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee substitute is adopted. Senator from Fauquier, Senator Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading.
Thank the senator. The question is, shall the resolution be engrossed and advanced to its third reading? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The resolution is engrossed and advanced to its third reading. Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
Mercifully, Madam Clerk, does that complete the calendar?
Yes, sir.
Mr. President, inquiry of the clerk, is this day 11?
That's what I was told earlier.
Thank the senator. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? The clerk will report any announcements on the desk.
Today, Monday, January 21st, the Committee on Commerce and Labor will meet 15 minutes after adjournment, Senate Room A, Pocahontas. The Committee on General Laws and Technology will meet 15 minutes after adjournment, Senate Room 3, Capitol. The Finance Subcommittee on Health and Human Resources will meet at 4 p.m., you have 4 minutes to get there. In subcommittee room number 1, 5th floor, Pocahontas. Senators Hanger, Howell, Norman, Newman, Barker, Donovan, Stewart, and Dance. The Northern Virginia delegation will meet at 5 p.m. Senate Leadership Conference Room, 6th floor, Pocahontas. Tuesday, January 22nd, the Finance Subcommittee on Economic Development and Natural Resources will meet at 7:30 a.m. in Subcommittee Room 1, 5th floor, Pocahontas. Senators Ruff, Saslaw, Hanger, Wagner, Obenshain, Stewart, and Dance. The Education and Health Subcommittee on Health Professions will meet at 8:30 a.m. Subcommittee Room number 2, 5th floor, Pocahontas. Senators Donovan, Sugarline, Carrico, Barker, Lucas, and Peake. The Committee on Finance will meet at 9 a.m. Committee Room B, Pocahontas. The Republican Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. Senate Room 2, Capitol. The Democratic Caucus will meet at 11:30 a.m. Senate Room 1 in the Capitol.
Senator from James City County, Senator Norman.
I rise for purposes of an announcement, Mr. President.
Senator has the floor.
Immediately upon adjournment, if those specific members of the Privileges and Elections Committee who were invited will meet very briefly down in the leadership room.
Thank you, Senator. Is there any other business to come before the Senate? Seeing none, Senator from Bedford, Senator Newman.
Mr. President, I move that the Senate do now adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow.
Thank the Senator. The question is, shall the Senate adjourn until 12 noon tomorrow? All in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. The Senate stands adjourned until 12 noon tomorrow.